All right, here we go, everyone, for the 30th. This is a big one, guys. The 30th episode of Dear Dr. Fantasy. And for some reason, my guests have just frozen. Oh, no. I don't know if you guys can hear me or not because you just froze. But they're looking appropriately astonished that there you are.
So, typical, isn't it? As soon as it starts,
so
they go.
So I said 30th, you guys were like, and then you were just frozen there. So that's
We're back. We're back.
That's gonna look great. But anyway, welcome everybody to the 30th episode of Dear Dr. Fantasy. For my very special guest on this monumental occasion, I have the Brothers Gwynne. We have here, I'm going to go, usually I say Ed and Will because Ed, you're the older, but Will is to the left and Ed is to the right. So I'm going to say Will and Ed. Hey guys, how are you?
Well, that feels weird. That does feel weird. Hello, Philip, Dr. Fantasy. Thanks so much for having us here. We're really excited to talk lots of books and much more today. Yeah, we really are. I can't believe it's your 30th episode of this.
Yeah, I'm trying to catch up to Jimmy. You know, he's done he's like 40 something episodes of chatting with nuts. I don't know if I'll ever be able to catch him, but you know,
slowly but surely.
Yeah, slowly but sure. I'm chipping away at his lead, you know.
Yeah.
So, but I am so delighted. It's been a while since we've had the opportunity to chat, and I have missed your company. So it is wonderful to be able to sit with you guys. And today it's really about you. It's about the two of you and whatever else comes up, of course. But I am very curious to find out. I think I know at least one book that is informative for the two of you. One very special book and series, but the first book especially, I think. But I am dying to know about other books that you two consider to be formative. And of course, you're going to have your own individual answers to this question. But going on the premise that you are what you read. Let's delve into who you guys are. What have been some of the formative reads? So whichever one of you wants to go first can go first.
You are now Will and Ed. Yeah, shall I kick it off then? You can kick it off. Yeah. Well, when I was younger, I was a maths person, so I wasn't really as good or into the English
we
side.
didn't really get on, did we?
No,
like numbers and.
But then, as soon as Dad got a deal, I kind of just flipped like that, and then I just was reading non-stop. And Dad read The Hobbit to me and absolutely loved it. The Book of Three and the whole Terran Wanderer and all five of them.
Good, yeah, those are big for me too. Yeah,
absolutely love them, and we love the film, the adaptation. Was it Disney?
Yeah,
the Black Cauldron. Yep. Yeah, fantastic. So they're very formative. And then David Eddings. I've read a lot of David Eddings's books, and what else? Probably there's a series you probably wouldn't have heard of it, Young Samurai, and it was like a children's fiction series just about being a samurai, and it was awesome. So yeah, that's a series that I just reread and reread.
Obviously, being the older brother, I think I kind of macheted the path, and then you copied me with the reading, I would say.
Yeah.
Because mine are exactly the same. Of course, growing up with Dad, if you didn't read fantasy, then you'd have to, find a new house. And he's not that brutal, but I think he might have threatened us once or twice.
I think. Well, luckily it never came to that.
Yeah,
but, we'll never know what would have happened.
No, exactly. But I mean, yeah, Lloyd Alexander was a particular big hit in our family, especially as we're of Welsh descent. So all that Welsh mythology.
Yeah.
The Book of Three is all about that. And it's if anyone hasn't read it, it's the same vein as kind of Narnia, that kind of that children's literature, fantasy. But there's some Lord of the Rings kind of nods in there, I think, as well. Definitely. And I just think it's got a very unique feel to it, though, especially for a children's fantasy.
Yeah, definitely.
Have you guys read, just to delve into the Welsh background of that, have you read the Mabinogion yet?
Not yet.
We're disappointments there.
I think I've got a couple of copies.
Yeah, lying around.
Okay, well, I can see what we're going to be discussing at some future point then.
That'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, it is just a very pivotal, and it's not really just one book. It's a collection of tales, some of them being Arthurian in nature and very different Arthurian some of the tales in the Mabinogion, the Arthurian ones, have obviously been influenced a bit by the more French, Arthurian tradition, but some of them are just like much more Celtic in feel. They're older. The older ones tend to be much different, and you will see a very different Arthur, I think, a very different tone and vibe there, and much more Celtic than the typical Arthurian stuff, which has been very much treated over the centuries by the French and the Europeans and the English and so forth. So yeah, you'll I think find that a fascinating read when you get to it. But yeah, so what else? So yeah, Lord Alexander was big for me too, and I loved reading those as a kid. I haven't revisited them actually since I read them when I was like maybe 11 years old. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, same with you.
Yeah. I'd love to reread them. I keep
you actually bought them a few weeks
I've
ago.
got a nice
you,
box set
to reread them. Yeah,
I'll definitely reread them next year. Hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, what other book has an oracular pig? You can't beat that.
yeah, that's right for sure. Yeah. So awesome. And what else would you guys consider? Either or, you can answer in whatever order you want, since there's going to be a lot of overlap, it seems.
I think so. Yeah, I think you went kind of through a Hob resurgence, didn't you?
Yeah, I think if I go a bit before that, I think I was reading all those books I mentioned just again and again, and then Papa Gwynne was like, I think you should explore a bit more instead of reading these 5-6 times.
Yeah,
each.
Will was a serial rereader, and you would do it with films as well. So he wouldn't want to watch any new films. He would watch the same one again,
like 3 times in a day,
and again. Yeah, and obviously it drove us all mad by hearing the same lines. We had to try and steer him to our other books, and then
then it got into Gemmell. I read Legend, absolutely loved it, and then got into the Wayland. I think there's 3 or 4 of them, and then it just kind of got into that more. So before it was kind of that traditional fantasy, and then it was more getting into that fantasy with kind of a modern twist on it with some more morally grey characters. And I think that was quite pivotal to the kind of the next phase of reading, and then that led me to Robin Hobb and the Realm of the Elderlings.
And when Will read Robin Hobb, it was great for us because, great for Mum and Dad, because they finally found a punishment that they could dish out to him. He wasn't a bad boy, but I mean, if he was, if you were a bit cheeky, then you'd have a Robin Hobb book taken away from you, wouldn't you?
For a day.
The worst thing. It's the first thing to actually affect him. Before it would have been a bit of chocolate or something, but he could have got through.
I could survive that.
Yeah. But
you guys are truly special, because with most kids, when they get in trouble, it's take away the cell phone. But with you, it's take away your Robin Hobb book.
Yeah. I was devastated.
I do remember you saying to Dad, "This is torture." And he said, "I know."
He understood.
It's like Glockter. He knows how to dish out the torture because he's been through it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, with you, when you were talking about how you would reread, rewatch, I think that most kids do that though, right? I mean, my kids, I remember my younger daughter, she read Harry Potter like 20 times, Percy Jackson, 20 times. That's how kids are, I think. When they find something they love, they read the heck out of it. So I think that's great. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think looking back at a lot of what we used to do as well is I would binge read a series, whereas now I kind of break it up quite a bit more. So it's all very fresh, and so I won't binge read series as often now. There may be 1 or 2 that I just cannot leave alone. But yeah, usually I mix it up a lot more now. So it kind of looking back on it, it's very interesting because you kind of see how your reading habits change.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So Gemmell, and I'm going to be reading some Gemmell soon myself, actually in January. So finally, it's long overdue. I'm going to start where he started with Legend, though. Yeah.
Yeah, Legend's fantastic. I reread that not long ago, and it's just so epic. I mean, I think you'll love the way he writes heroes. It's in such a unique way. Definitely, some of your characters definitely remind me of Gemmell's writing, even though you haven't read him. So that's really cool.
Yeah. I'm sure there's an influence that's just sort of, through other authors. The other authors, who were influenced by Gemmell have influenced me. I'm sure that's the case. Awesome. What else? Any other important formative reads from those earlier years, or shall we move on? What about you, Ed? Are any that you would mention that Will did not read?
I think the most important to me was there's this guy called John Gwynne, and I read his first book, Malice, which was called So Deep a Malice before it was published.
Yeah.
From the John Milton quote. And yeah, that was probably the most important for me. I didn't really read too much, I think, when I became a teenager, but as Dad was writing these books, I kind of read it alongside. And it's so funny. I still call some of the characters by the old names, and Gar was Avalgar and things like that. So
wow, that is so cool.
Yeah. And I remember, there was quite a lot changed from the first draft to the publication version. But
so I just learned something new. Of course I knew about the Paradise Lost influence, but I did not realize that the title Malice is also a nod to Paradise Lost, so which is so cool. I mean, there's been some great series, for his Dark Materials, for example, that are nods to Paradise Lost, and Faithful and the Fallen is definitely up there, I think. So that is so cool. I did not realize. I don't know how I didn't know that the title Malice was derived ultimately from. That is a cool little tidbit here.
Yeah, we think so.
I think we take it for granted how much, like, obviously we love reading, and a big part of that, I think, is that it's being able to escape into a world, isn't it? But we've been able to have that to an extra level with Papa Gwynne creating these characters. We talk about them around the dinner table, and they just felt real. And so we were reading his works. I mean, when he took characters away from us, it was devastating. But
we even do games about the Faith and the Fallen, don't we? Like, if me and Will fancy, challenging each other, we'll say, name as many Faith and the Fallen characters as you can
in 60
seconds, and we'll.
Oh my goodness!
Geeky thing, and it's like, who's the biggest fan of the Faith and the Fallen? And obviously me.
It would be funny, yeah, of course. It would be funny because of I remember asking Papa Gwynne about a character who's kind of a little bit mentioned, but I wanted to know a bit about their background, and he said, "Who?" I don't know who that is, and so I had to remind him who that was. So
that's just so funny,
so many times.
So I think the reason why you love the Silmarillion so much is because of the family trees, and William loves to know the background. Who is the third cousin of this character? Who was Glorfindo's best friend? You like the details, don't you? So Dad,
I like having the full picture.
You'd ask Dad, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
it's about the family trees, and he'd be like, "I don't know, I just made it up."
Yeah,
which is not the answer you were looking for.
It wasn't. I've had to drive him more towards that direction. Yeah.
So somebody's gonna have to write a Silmarillion equivalent for the Banished Lands, then, obviously.
Yeah,
right.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And most of it will be made up because Dad hasn't got any notes.
Well, the thing is, he has it all in his head. I don't know how he remembers.
Well, it would be like, who would beat this person in a fight?
And exactly. Ranking everyone.
Yeah.
So this was obviously just a family story in many ways.
Yeah.
That makes it truly special. And you have a relationship to the series that no one else has. As much as we all love it and we're fans, and we wish we could be with Corbin and the crew and visit the Banished Lands, you guys spent a lot of your childhood there, and in a way that I guess it's just really cool. I mean, I'm kind of jealous, but I'm also thinking about, wow, that just must have been such a wonderful, magical childhood in so many ways. And that explains so much, that we see on your channel too, your passion for fantasy and historical fiction and all of that, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it makes a big difference when you can talk to people around you about, that's the amazing thing of the internet in the last 10 years, isn't it? That if you don't know people who are really into books like you are, you can kind of identify with others on there, like on these channels, the Discords, the social medias. And it's amazing like that. And we're lucky that it was in our family. Everyone loves books, and we can talk about the same things together.
Oh, you are so lucky. You are so fortunate in that regard, because, I love my family, but they're mostly not fantasy readers. So, when I talk about my book, they're very indulgent, and they're, they're patient, and, Philip's doing one of his weirdo things again, so, but you guys have each other, and it's just so cool. And it's definitely one of the things I love about your channel. I think we all just vicariously experience that brotherly love when you guys are chatting, and being hard on each other and all of that. So that is a wonderful thing. But it extends to your entire family, I think. And that's just a really, you guys are aware of this, I know, but it bears repeating how special that is. So, yeah.
Yeah, we are lucky. And also we can steal each other's books. Borrow, I mean. We can borrow each other's books.
Yeah, I've seen my copies of Boudica in your room. So
all right, you did agree to that one, actually. Yeah.
Who steals the most? Who steals the most books in the family?
Well, I think we both steal them from Papa Gwynne the most, actually.
That's true, yeah.
I
think he doesn't notice as much. I think we spend hours looking over our libraries, but he doesn't really.
Well, we know his shelves better than he does.
Yeah,
that's funny. He probably secretly likes it when you steal his books too, though, I'm guessing.
Yeah, until he's looking for that book and he's got notes in there, and he's like, "Where is it?" And one of us just sneakily just goes off.
Buy him
I just saw this lying around.
Yeah, we're just putting it away. Or we'll buy him a Christmas present, and it'll be like a Viking non-fiction book, and then I will read it before he does. So it must live on my shelf.
Mastered the art of buying a present that you also want to read.
Thank you.
Wait, do you actually read it before you wrap it, even, and then wrap it like it's
been known.
Yeah,
it's been known.
That's so funny.
I don't admit it too much, but yeah.
You'd be very careful not to break the spine or anything.
Yeah. Like leaning down the table just like that.
Yeah. Or if he catches you reading it, you know, what's that? Oh, nothing, just yeah.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to read this, don't worry.
So obviously, The Faithful and the Fallen is huge, formative thing for you guys in a way that is probably not even describable. But are there any other big reads that you would say are essential for understanding who you are, to the people you are today?
Well, thinking of you, like you were really into fantasy, but you stopped reading as much for quite a few years, didn't you? And then was it the Sisters Brothers or Blumeridian?
Yeah, I had a kind of a Western phase, I think, to watch quite a few Clint Eastwood films, and so I wanted to read a bit of that. And I read a book called The Sisters Brothers, which is about two cowboy brothers, and they're kind of on a journey to go and find someone.
Yeah.
But it doesn't read like a Western. It's not like a, see you at high noon dueling kind of book. It's just about two brothers who are riding across California, and they get up, meet some quirky people. But I think it's written so well, and the brothers do remind me of us. Yeah. Unfortunately.
That's so funny.
But
it was your reading reawakening.
I think that and Cormac McCarthy was a big discovery of mine that is a big part of probably who I am as a reader today. And not to mention Joe Abercrombie's books as well.
Oh my goodness, yeah, those are huge. Yeah, so they made that into a film as well, The Sisters Brothers, right?
Yeah, they did
with Joaquin Phoenix.
It's not quite as good because you don't get to
the internal monologues.
You don't get no internal monologues, but it's still a good watch and a really good quick read.
Oh, it is. So you'd recommend the film then?
I would definitely recommend it. I think maybe read the book first, and then you'll enjoy the film more. Yeah,
of course, read the book first. Yeah.
And whilst that's a Western, it really just reignited your love for reading. You've not stopped for the last 3 years since then, have you?
Yeah, since then it's been a roller coaster.
Wow, that is awesome. So Western is a big part of your reading identity.
My identity now, definitely. Yeah.
100%. Yeah. That is cool. Yeah. So you need to visit some of the American West at some point in your life then, if you haven't already. I don't think you have, right?
No, not yet. But hopefully in the next couple of years we'll get over to Colorado and New Mexico and all places like that. It's
nice.
Really,
yeah. When I was your age, for me, it's funny because I'm American, but for me, the place that I romanticized was where you live. So that was where that was the place I longed to go to. And of course it had a lot to do with me learning Old English and all that stuff too. So, but for me, that was my pilgrimage, was going over to the United Kingdom and its various parts. Cool. What about you, Will? Any other big reads that you would describe as essential to who you are?
Yeah, it's hard because there's so many kind of mixed in with it. I think that, as I said, Hobb was huge. Mark Lawrence as well. I love Red Sister and the book of the Ancestor trilogy. And it's kind of like growing into that new sense of fantasy, and then got into Joe Abercrombie and more kind of those grimdark elements, which I love reading about so much now. And then I think as soon as I kind of got to a bit older, a bit more English and history studies as well, I read quite a lot of non-fiction. And I love into mixing that with we're quite obsessive, aren't we? So if we get into a certain time period or theme, that I can read fiction inspired by that, but then also the non-fiction accompanying it, and it's just great to just totally immerse yourself in that.
Nice. Yeah, so we have two among many others authors that we love, one being Mark Lawrence and one being Joe Abercrombie, and I discovered them really when I was starting to try to expand beyond being a Tolkien and Ursula Le Guin fan into being just a broader fantasy reader. So I started with Mark Lawrence. I started with The Broken Empire, and I've been reading his books in publication order, more or less. And so I just finished Holy Sister, actually. So I've just finished Book of the Ancestor.
What do you think?
I love it. I think it might, and I just finished it, so I have to let it sit a bit, but it might be my favorite Mark Lawrence trilogy now. So I loved it. I really loved it. And I think he does the theme of friendship better than anybody. I mean, he just does it really well. I mean, he did it in Red Queen's War, and I loved it there with Jalin and Snorri. But I think it's even better done in Book of the Ancestor. I don't know. Maybe because it's also in some ways a coming of age story. So it's a little bit, I guess, more in the feels in that sense. I don't know. What do you think, Will? Now you've read all those trilogies already or not?
I've not read his first.
You've done it in a funny order, haven't you? I'm reading them publication like you, Philip, and I've just started Red Sister.
Okay.
Practice mine day before yesterday.
Yeah. So I've read his Impossible Times science fiction trilogy. I've read the Book of the Ancestor and Book of the Ice as well. So I've read.
So you're all out of order.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But then I plan on in January actually going back and reading Prince of Thorns. So I'll be rectifying the weird order. Then I can just say I've read everything after that and Red Queen's War, which I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, and you will find that tonally, the first trilogy is grimdark. It is different from the other stuff that you've read. So, I mean, as far as I can tell, I've only read the 3 trilogies myself, but it is very much grimdark. Whereas the other trilogy, Red Queen's War, that is set in that same world and it's parallel to Broken Empire, is not grimdark. Although it is pretty gritty in places.
Grim, yeah.
But it is. I would not call it grimdark. Actually, I don't know, Ed. What would you say?
No, I definitely say it's a bit more. I don't know. It reminds me of The Greatcoats by Sebastian de Castell. A bit more swashbuckling. I love the Norse mythology in there, but it's definitely not grimdark.
Yeah.
Well, I've heard that Jorgancraft is inspired by Alex in A Clockwork Orange. So I think A Clockwork Orange is a brilliant book. So I'm really looking forward to kind of seeing the relations, especially in the main character there.
Yeah. That, I mean, I didn't realize it when I read it, but it makes a lot of sense when somebody says, "Oh, yeah, okay, I can see that." Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, and he's we're talking about Jorg here, obviously. I used to say Jorg, but I realized that Mark Lawrence says it with a J sound. So I'm gonna say Jorg from now on. But he's a character that a lot of people read that trilogy or start it and they're like, and it's not the easiest read. It really isn't. But I think what Lawrence does by the end of that trilogy is so brilliant with that character. And one of the ways he achieves it, and he does this in every trilogy I've read so far, is he plays with chronology. He has a lot of flashbacks, and they're not just like occasional. They're essential. They're a part of the way the story emerges and the way he builds connection to character through those flashbacks, through that broken chronology. Is just brilliant. It's astounding, actually, how he does that in every series I've read so far of his. I think that's really clever, actually. The other thing he does, I think, that is distinct from other fantasy, for the most part, is how much his fantasies are actually science fiction, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, he is. I think he has a science background, so that's.
He does. Yeah. I think he said that he actually used to be able to say the saying, "This is rocket science."
Yeah.
I think that was, wasn't it? Yeah. So, but definitely very sci-fi, but just painted with some fantasy colors, basically.
Yeah. I think a big thing about Mark Lawrence's writing is his confidence to make different decisions and go in a different direction. I think that's huge in quite a lot of books I love. It's going against the grain where you kind of got those themes and motifs that you absolutely love and those tropes, but taking them in a different direction, subverting them. Like Joe Abercrombie is definitely a very confident writer, and that is part of the appeal, I think. Definitely is to me.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I was just gonna say I agree about taking risks, you know, as an author, and Lawrence does that in his genre blending. And I always think of Stephen King's Dark Tower series now when you talk about blending genres. I mean, have you guys read the Dark Tower series yet?
I've only read book one, but I really need to carry on because I read Carrie recently, and I thought that was great. I mean, his character work is just outstanding.
Well, Ed, with the Western influence, I mean,
I know it's high up on the list. It is.
Yeah. Dark Tower is your series, my friend. So I think you guys are going to find it very interesting and intriguing. So you have read book one, The Gunslinger.
Yeah. And basically every single time I watch a video by Mike on Mike's Book Reviews, I'm just looking towards my Stephen King collection and thinking I need to pick it up again. And because I listened to it on Audible, but I think it was one that might not translate so well in the audiobooks. So I think I've left it quite a while now, so I'll probably reread book one and then carry on with the series.
Okay. Yeah, cool. I mean, I think you guys are going to love it. It's just so weird and different. Every single book is different from the previous ones, and you don't know what's coming. I mean, it's just so talk about risk taking. I mean, he just goes for it. Stephen King does in this series, and I haven't read anything else by him. So a lot of Stephen King fans will say, "Oh, no, you have to read this and that and the other in order to." You don't actually have to. It's fine if you just want to read Dark Tower. I got so much from the series. Now, I know I missed some Easter eggs. I know that you can almost tell when a character from another book appears in Dark Tower because it just feels like, this character exists somewhere else in the multiverse, right?
Yeah.
But you don't have to, and eventually I will read The Stand, and I will read, whatever else I'm supposed to read. Salem's Lot.
I think you'd really like Salem's Lot.
Yeah, that's one you're supposed to read before you read Wolves of the Kala, because a character from Salem's Lot appears in Wolves of the Kala.
Yeah. Papa Gwynne told us, didn't he? Yeah.
Oh, so he's read Dark Tower.
Yeah, he's a huge King fan. I mean, I think he said when he was 12 or 13, his sister gave him Salem's Lot. She said, "This is too scary for me." So she gave it to a younger brother. And then he read it and he was terrified, but absolutely loved it. And then he read Carrie, and then he just followed King throughout his career. I don't think he's read everything. I think there's a bit where he dropped out. But he's a huge King fan.
Oh, neat. Yeah. So, but I mean, Dark Tower is fantasy. It's science fiction, it's Western, it's horror, it is whatever you want it to be. It's just, and it's meta fiction. It's weird. Okay. I think you're going to love it.
It sounds like it's got everything. So I'm definitely looking forward to getting to it.
Yeah. Have you read any of his short stories? Oh, no, you said this is the only thing you've read by him, isn't it?
Well, I've read one Dark Tower related short story now, which is the Sisters of Illyria, I think it was. It's just like a side story, but it's Dark Tower. Little Sisters of Illyria, maybe is maybe what it's called. And that's it. I do have Stephen King's book on writing as well, which I'm very intrigued.
Yeah, I read that. That's really good. Well worth.
You have read it? Okay, cool.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I read that before I started writing, so that was good. Some good advice there. So obviously some stuff that is only probably suitable for Stephen King. So a lot of the stuff that we can definitely pick up. So.
But you said it was just really interesting learning about his journey with it as well, didn't you?
Yeah, definitely.
It's crazy, isn't it? Because like he threw Carrie, his first book, in the bin because it was meant to be a short story, and him and his wife, they didn't really have enough money for him to spend time writing a full book, and he just wanted to sell a short story for a bit of money, and he's like, "Oh, this is getting out of control. Before I write a full book, I'm going to put it in the bin." But his wife saw it and she read the beginning and she said, "You have to carry on with this."
Wow.
Yeah, and then I think it was turned away by 20, 30 publishers, and then one just said yes, and then just grew into a phenomenon, and then look at him now.
Wow. That's a great story
Yeah.
about perseverance. It's interesting you say that too, because Dark Tower is very much also a series where Stephen King is clearly engaged in thinking about the relationship of a writer to their work as a creator. And you'll see it really becomes more and more important as the series progresses. So that's, for me, that element of the series really worked. And I found it fascinating, maybe because I'm also an aspiring writer, I don't know. But I thought it was really cool how he worked that in there. His relationship to his fiction is something that is another kind of running theme, I guess you could say.
Okay, yeah. The more you talk about it, the highest rising on my TBR.
Yeah, no, I'm actually, considering your dad is a King fan and what it is, I just cannot imagine it not being a huge success with the two of you. So it'll be interesting to watch you guys go through the Dark Tower for sure. And I'm a recent convert myself. I just finished
spreading the King love.
Mike's gonna be very happy with you.
Yeah, I can't call myself a constant reader because I've only read Dark Tower, but you know, I can say I'm a Dark Tower junkie at least, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So Philip, what do you think of the term grimdark? Because I see, lots of people nowadays like to debate that, don't they? And I always thought, what do you think of that term?
Yeah, so I have a take on it, and a lot of people don't like my take on it, which is fine. But I think grimdark, and we just for a moment ago we were talking about how Mark Lawrence's Broken Empire is grimdark, but his other stuff is not. And to me, and it's a good example because it does bear out what I think is the difference. To me, and by the way, your dad's books are not grimdark. I don't think they are. So here's the difference. Grimdark is the response within fantasy to modernism, which is very much in literature wrestling with the point where we arrived, where we felt like, that the universe has no intrinsic meaning, that we are absurd and we are essentially alienated, that we, meaning human beings, that this is the world we're in. We're an absurd world of alienation and no intrinsic meaning. And so this was something that in literature in the early 20th century was very much delved into a lot, existentialism, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it took a little while for it to make its way fully, I think, into fantasy, because fantasy is in some ways a very conservative genre. Fantasy tends to be, it doesn't have to be, but it has tended to be more backward looking. And it is invested in tropes that we all love because they're familiar. So I think fantasy, more than other genres, perhaps was resistant a little bit to modernism, but it really hit completely with grimdark. And to me, grimdark is basically fantasy fans and authors engaging in this feeling that we don't have any inherent meaning in this universe. Now, there are a couple of different responses to that. And there are labels for these responses. So existentialism, for example, is the belief that there is no intrinsic meaning to the universe. But, and this is a big but, we can craft meaning by just doing what we do in the world, by being with the people we're with, and that sort of thing. So you can, put on your boots and go out there in the world and make meaning out of whatever you can. And whereas nihilism is essentially the universe has no intrinsic meaning and nothing you do matters, right? That's the difference. So, and I think within grimdark you can find both of those. You can find the full spectrum of from existentialist to nihilism. But either way, it's wrestling. To me, grimdark is fundamentally, it's not about violence, because if it were about violence, then all fantasy would be grimdark. Because in fact, I would say with grimdark, typically you have a more honest relationship with violence than you do with typical epic fantasy, where violence is often romanticized.
Yeah.
Whereas in grimdark, it's visceral, it's gross, and
disillusionment.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, that's what I think. What do you guys think?
Yeah, because it's interesting because I've heard some people say Papa Gwynne is grimdark, where I'd probably say
I don't think so.
Because if you look at it overall, Papa Gwynne's dominant focus is more on friendship, camaraderie, duty, rather than the dominant focus being on like the depravities of humanity. They are there. There's a lot of terrible people in his books, but as I said, it's more the focus and heart of the story is those roots of friendship, and I think that's a key reason why it's not really grimdark.
I agree. Yeah.
I think lots of people say the more realistic a book is, the more grimdark it is. But you know, at the same time, I think I definitely disagree with that. You know, there obviously realism. There is a certain part of grimdarkiness there, but I think grimdark might not just be a genre. It could be with anything. You might have a grimdark character. Obviously, people might say that that grimdark to them is a character, behaving in a way where they have no modern values. I think that's one thing. Lots of people didn't connect with the Northmen because the characters in that obviously had no modern values really. So they might say that's a grimdark book, but also other people say it's kind of a banishment of hope, really, isn't it? Grimdark, and I definitely don't think Faith in the Fallen or any of Dad's books come into grimdark. You have to have bad characters that do things with no morals to actually progress the plot. Have someone that you're not going to support, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree actually, and I think that realism is the wrong word entirely. Is friendship not real? Is love not real? Is beauty not real? And those are all things you find, I think, in more traditional fantasy, which is why I agree with you that your father's books, nobody handles the found family trope better than your dad. And a big part of that is that's a big part of why there's so much heart in your father's books. And that's probably the thing I love the most about all of his books, is that idea that yes, the world is full of suffering and hardship, and it's tough sometimes, but when you reach out and you find that family, you find those people that you love and you stick to them, you can get through it. Or you just die trying. It's truth and courage, right? So that to me is just as real as somebody being completely alienated. They're just different responses to suffering, really.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
It's about the focus, isn't it? Because if you look at Joe Abercrombie, there's a moment in the original First Law trilogy where you think there might be some found family here, and then he takes it away.
Now, Joe Abercrombie is true grimdark, in my opinion. And I know he wears that Lord Grimdark label in a very cheeky way. But I do think, as much as and this is not a criticism in any way whatsoever, because I am a huge Abercrombie fan, top 5 author for me. The guy's brilliant. I love his books. But it's true grimdark in the sense, according to my definition, because every First Law book ends in alienation and absurdity. I mean, there's just no better illustration of how absurd and alienated we are than First Law. And you said it, Will. I mean, it's just, there are moments you think, oh yes, they're going to finally have a healthy, relationship here, and then,
so that doesn't exist in the Abercrombie book.
No.
Yeah, and it's that element of amorality, isn't it?
In a sense, it is, and again, it's just a response to the feeling that we are, we're in a essentially indifferent universe.
Yeah.
But what makes it bearable, I would find it very difficult actually to read First Law if it weren't for the fact that Abercrombie has the most brilliant sense of humor I've ever encountered. And somehow reading about these pathetic, broken, just tragic individuals is fun, because I don't know anyone else who could pull this off this way because of his humor. I mean, he's just that good, I think. So
definitely
British too. There's something very British about that humor, don't you think?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I think that's why we like it so much.
Dark humor,
it is a
quite
very
sarcastic,
tongue-in-cheek kind of humor that the reader feels like they're kind of having a dialogue with the author and they're laughing at the character. And Yeah, like even stuff with Jezel is just so funny
when he's looking at his jaw in the mirror. This is the jaw of heroes.
Yeah, I love Abercrombie's sense of humor, and I mean there is a sense of I mean whether he set out to write grimdark, I don't know if grimdark was a term really when he started writing The Blade itself, but obviously the first story is kind of a response to the classic Tolkien style fantasy. So whether he tried to be grimdark or not, it's kind of that's a product now, and people go by that as a genre. It helps them kind of people like a label, don't they? And it definitely helps people to label books that they like or styles of literature they like.
Yeah, definitely, because you see there's drawbacks to that, but there's positives as well, isn't there? You can say there's got grimdark elements, and someone who's loved Abercrombie or Mark Lawrence's original trilogy will think, oh, this will be a book for me. But it is interesting how much terms can dominate what you read.
Oh, it is. I mean, it can color what you think you're reading in some ways, and that's why the labels have a limited usefulness, I think. But they can be helpful to help people find books that they might enjoy based on previous reads they've loved. So
yeah, definitely.
So they exist.
Yeah, exactly. And talking about it, it's so interesting, isn't it? How different fantasy can be. Where I think there's probably a few other genres, but mainly I think fantasy. One of the strong points about things going for it is the variety and how different two fantasy books can be. Because you've got everything that every other genre can have, plus the fantastical elements and all of that added into the mix.
Yeah, I agree. And it's becoming more and more true, actually, as fantasy gets more and more diverse, which is wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Drawing from all kinds of traditions, really. So it's exciting. Actually, it's fun to be on BookTube and hearing about series and trying out series that are inspired by various places on the planet and that are going places that nobody's gone yet, and sometimes giving new clothes to old stories that we need, because these old stories have to be told again and again.
Definitely. And the rise of historical fantasy as well seems to be becoming a bit more prevalent, which we love. I've read the Winter Night trilogy. Catherine Arden, loved that. Shelley Parker Chan's She Became the Sun, thought that was really great. And then this year, Shauna Lawless, The Children of Gods and Fighting Men.
I have that.
That was brilliant.
Yeah, I just mentioned it in my winter TBR video, and I mentioned you guys actually when I held up the book and I said, "Oh, the Brothers Gwynne like this one. I think I'm gonna like it." So I'm looking forward to reading that, because I love mythology in general, and I love Celtic mythology. So I'm hoping that.
Yeah, I think you'll really enjoy it, and it's really getting to the heart of the two main characters. There's two POVs, and don't want to give anything away, but I just absolutely love those exploration of their identities and the characters, how they react to the environment.
Yeah, because that's all over the descriptions of the books. She's drawing from those mythological races that existed in Ireland before, according to the invasion myths, right? So you had the Tuatha De Danann, and you had the Fomorians and all of those, right, before the humans came along. So I think she's drawing from all that, right?
Yeah. And it's done so well. I think one thing, it's just so exciting to be a fantasy reader now because of all these new books coming out. I've never kept tabs on so many new books coming out, and I think that is definitely the golden find of 2022 is definitely Shauna Lawless's book, because it's just a mixture, a melting pot of everything that we love about fantasy, and definitely what you will love about fantasy as well.
Yeah, neat. Yeah, it's inspiring, and I don't know if it gets you guys thinking, because I know you guys are writers as well as readers too, so you must be thinking about, what's my mark on the genre going to be, right? Which is a very important question, I think, for a young author to ask, right? What's my niche in here going to be? What's my contribution? What am I going to do that doesn't have to be necessarily never been done before? Because even Abercrombie talked about how when he was young and ambitious and was going to do something, he was going to revolutionize fantasy and all of that. And I think he's talked about how he realized that, I think a lot of what I did was done already. I'm doing it in my own way, but I'm not I'm not the revolutionary I thought I was.
No.
But nevertheless, we all have our little things. What's that, Will?
It's about making it fresh and engaging and showing it from a different perspective, because you can look at the same thing, the same object, but looking at it from a different way makes it just entirely different. And like with Abercrombie, like having those grim dark elements, but then adding dark humor just makes it a completely different read.
Yeah, cool. So are you guys at that stage now where you're engaging in your writing and you're thinking about if you don't mind me prying a little bit, be as cagey as you like about it. But how is the writing going if you're doing it actively right now?
Well, you're further ahead than me, aren't you?
I've done about 60,000 words of my most serious project. I've always written, well, probably over the last 5 or 6 years, I've written a load of rubbish. But this is me really trying, and it started off when I read a book called The Sun, which is by Philip Meyer, who's more known for his literary fiction. But it's set in 1850s southern states of America, where a young boy from Texas was captured by a band of the Comanche, which were a Native American band, and then he was kind of indoctrinated, and then he lived his life and became a Texas Ranger later. And it just this book kind of opened my eyes to all these different cultures that I'd never read about, and also that time period of America, which was really interesting to me. So that's kind of what kickstarted it. And yeah, I'm about 60,000 words into a project now, which is always changing as I'm writing it, but I've sat down with Dad. He's helped me kind of plan it through, and he kind of showed me what he did with especially with The Faith and the Fallen, that helped him map out his books. And it's it's really exciting. I love writing and I love reading and finding all these new books. Especially, this is what BookTube's amazing for, finding these new books that really help me kind of with ideas for my book as well and inspire me. So that's it's really exciting.
Absolutely. And you guys are don't need to be told this, because I know you've been told it a million times by your parents, and you've lived it out, I think, beautifully. But read, read broadly, read outside of fantasy, read, whatever, if you want to write fantasy. Don't just read fantasy, read lots of other stuff, right?
Yeah.
So Ed, is it fantasy, or are you doing more historical? It is fantasy.
It is fantasy, definitely. I hope people will know the inspirations behind it and we'll see kind of my nods. But yeah, it's definitely fantasy through and through.
Okay, cool. And if, again, don't answer if you don't want to. Is it a completely made up world, or is it sort of closely based on our world, or what are we going to have here?
It's very much based on our own world, similar to kind of Mark Lawrence's. He's based The Broken Empire on Europe and that kind of thing. And I'm sure once people read it, they'll know exactly what it's trying to be. But I want people to know I guess I'm going to wear my influences on my sleeve, and but kind of, like you say, make do my own thing with it, hopefully.
Well, I do think that you can find within fantasy a kind of spectrum where you'll have authors who use historical cultures and put a spin on them.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many great examples. Tad Williams, for example, in Sorrow, Memory, and Thorn. You can kind of see what he's doing there, right? He took Nordic influences. He took a kind of Roman influence. You can see it. It's there. Mm-hmm. Right? You don't have to imagine too hard, and that's a clever thing to do, because you're borrowing the vibe that many readers will be familiar with, right? So if you know anything about Romans, then you kind of know what Tad Williams is trying to do there, right?
Yeah.
With culture. So there are writers who do that, and then there's on the other end of the spectrum, I think, and you can never really escape our world entirely, right? I mean, there's got to be some foundation that readers can connect to. But there are others who kind of go much further away and create very different worlds. I don't know a good example there, but they're less obviously based in a certain historical period, right? Yeah. So it sounds like
being a history buff, I think, that's one thing that I love about reading, that I'll read David Gemmell's the Regante series, and that is obviously the Romans versus the Celts, and it's Caesar's Gallic Wars, and Faith and the Fallen is an element of Caesar's Gallic Wars as well, and that is what really excites me, because I can then apply it to our own world and our own history, and and learn more about cultures. And I think that's one thing that I love about fantasy nowadays, is that you're able to read about different cultures that don't have to be, you know, mapped out and they're, you know, is 100% authentically correct. You know, you can put your own thing on it and be fantastical and kind of be imaginative, but also, you know, borrow things from history and different places as well.
Wow. Yeah. So again, don't answer if you don't want to, but do you have a goal in mind for finishing your book?
In terms of word count, or
no, just in terms of timeline, I guess.
I would hoping to finish it by the summer. So that's, I mean, I've been hoping that for about 3 years now, but so we will see. But I think, yeah, I need to get it done by the summer, really, and at least have a first draft. So
okay. Yeah. Well, you have I would say a wonderful editor near you, or a beta reader, alpha reader. I don't know what you'll call your dad, but
all of them.
He'll be the judge. Yeah, the judge.
Developmental editor.
Yeah, you and Dad have read the first section, haven't you? So
yeah, we have. Yeah,
some good feedback, which is good.
Oh, fantastic. And you're able, Will, when you read Ed's book, are you able to disengage from being his brother and just be critical? Is that an easy thing to do?
I think initially it's a bit harder, but then I think I am I can kind of do that, and we're open with each other, so it's open to be critical. But the things I think work, things I think don't work, and then just talking about it is great fun.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, another thing to bond over, I guess, too.
Yeah. Or fight.
Yeah. Is there going to be a map in the book?
There won't. No.
No maps.
No. Aww. I know. Oh, well, maybe at the end. There's a reason.
Oh, okay.
It'll come into play.
Yeah.
Oh, now I'm intrigued. Okay. Neat. Okay. And any nosy questions I can ask you? Let me think. We'll come back if I can think of any other nosy questions for you. But let's talk about you, Will. You are also engaged in writing. You said that your brother is a little further along, but
yeah,
it sounds like you've gotten somewhere.
Yeah, so I've got a few ideas. I've got one that is more of an epic fantasy idea that I put on the back burner. But as we said earlier, I love histories and like family backgrounds. So every now and then, if I just have a random idea that pops into my head, I'll just write kind of a short form story about that. And
random uncle's name.
Yeah, not quite like that, but more of a story or a little element like that. I'll write it down. Hopefully, eventually in a year or so, there'll actually be a kind of a history to this world that can all tie together. And then I've got something that's a bit more prominent. I've been reading a lot of non-fiction lately about more of the ancient world, the fall of Carthage. I read by Adrian Goldsworthy. I read, but you just finished it last week, Persian Fire by Tom Holland. So it's more about kind of the Greco-Persian wars, and then the rise and fall of Carthage. And so I've got
these are influences that we could expect to see in what emerges eventually.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's going to be a world that's inspired by that period and the type of warfare and those cultures. And again, it's taking that inspiration, isn't it? As Ed said, we're history lovers, and I love to see that prevalent in fantasy. And I remember Papa Gwynne said that with his books. He tried to write what he loves with those traditional fantasy elements, but with Game Walls vibes into the mix. And of course, he loves Celtic myths and legends and kind of the Roman Empire, and that's in the Faithful and the Fallen. Then with the Bloodsworn, he loves Norse mythology, Norse culture. All of that, and bringing it into play and making it a passion project. And so I'm trying to do that slowly but surely, just making more progress. So because I've got a plan from beginning to end of the story, but then I'm adding kind of those historical details in the mix, which it's interesting seeing how it kind of changes the form and shape of the story.
So what you're doing in a way is you're kind of writing your Silmarillion first.
Yeah, never to that level. But I'd love to do something that obviously inspired. I've been reading A Song of Ice and Fire over the last year, and I love kind of the whole history to all these characters, some who are loosely mentioned, some who come into play later. And so I really just love kind of being able to completely immerse yourself into a world.
Yeah, that's a great example of a fantasy series that is clearly linked to a very specific period in European history, in the not the 100 Years' War so much as the War of the Roses, really. It's very clear, right? I mean, he's taken even, I think, certain incidents from that period and translated them into his fiction. So that's a good example of very historically anchored fantasy series. So I can see where you guys would really enjoy it a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Wow. Well, and do you have a specific timeline in mind, Will, for your emergence of your book, or is this still too early stages to kind of project that?
Well, I'm hoping to actually start writing in probably February, around then, and then I'll kind of just see the flow and see where it goes from then, and see kind of I guess with short stories I've been able to write quite quickly. I've done quite a few short stories, but it'd probably be a very different process writing something more of this element. I remember when I was 15 or 16 I wrote I think 50,000 words of a book, but it was absolutely terrible, but it was just fun doing it.
Was Malice,
with different names. Yeah, basically. And then Papa Gwynne was like, I recognize elements of this. But yeah, so it'd be interesting kind of seeing how it's different with kind of a larger project from those short stories I've planned before.
But you know what? Even as much as you can poke fun at yourself for writing something like that, you were writing when you were 15. And that's awesome. And not many people can say that they produced a 50,000 word, story when they were 15 years old. That's something that will pay off,
Yeah.
I think a lot of times I would love to give younger writers that advice is just, maybe it's not going to be what you eventually publish, but you're practicing, right? You're honing your craft, which is so important. You're not going to start writing a book and be a brilliant author without doing that a bunch of times first, right?
Yeah, definitely, because we set ourselves a few challenges, didn't we? We looked at kind of what we're a bit weaker at. So like we're saying, my weakness may be action and dialogue. So I'd have a few short stories dedicated to just working on that. And the same with you, and kind of just working together. Again, it's that element of both love writing, both love reading, and being able to work with that.
Yeah.
And we're very lucky.
Yeah, you are. Oh, that's just awesome. So Ed, I assume you also have read Will's writing?
I have, yeah, I've read it, and you've got a favorite short story of mine, which you sent into a history magazine, didn't you?
Oh, that one,
your college, which was excellent, and it was a historical fiction short story tackling, what was it tackling again?
So the Highlander Regiment during the kind of in the 7 Years War in America.
Ooh, so
it was
something
unique, yeah.
It's been published in a literary magazine.
So I sent it in. I got to the last stage. I didn't win that, but so it was sent in for like a competition. I did one about I think when I was 10 or 11. Sent one to a competition. I wrote about going back in time and saving Harold at the Battle of Hastings.
Oh. You're being modest, because so William wrote the story when you were 10. Was it? Must have been 10.
Yeah, 10 or 11.
And it's quite a big deal in the UK, where BBC Two, which is how do you describe BBC Two?
A radio
station, a big radio station. It's also a TV channel, but they do a competition called the 500 words competition.
Yeah,
and then the final 25 children go and meet some of the royal family. They go meet loads of celebrities at this big palace, and then they announce the winners there, and it's a whole big ceremony, isn't it? And you got into the final 25.
I did, yeah.
So your story was read across the country on the radio, and then you went to meet, who are the celebrities you met there?
Her Royal Highness now, Camilla.
There you go.
Charles Dance I met. So yeah, it was crazy. Kenneth Branagh.
Jeremy Irons,
yeah.
What?
And that was insane. That was amazing,
yeah. Wow. Wait, now hang on a sec here. So you wrote this story about saving Harold Godwinson.
Yeah.
And your name is William.
Yes.
So wait.
I know. The irony.
You betrayed your namesake in
I know.
Yeah, okay. William,
I had to do it.
William the Conqueror. Right? So your sympathies were lying with the Anglo-Saxons in this battle? Yeah.
So it goes from William the Conqueror to William the Conquered, really, doesn't it? So.
Really? Wow. Okay. So alternate history kind of story. Wow.
But
and then cramming that in 500 words.
Yeah, it's an amazing achievement that you got to get there. It was
crazy.
There were 120,000 entries.
Yeah, there were.
Wow, that's tremendous. So is this a story we could find somewhere on the internet?
Yeah, it would still be on there, or the BBC. I think BBC Two, I think.
2015, 500, I reckon 2015.
2014, 2015, it'll be on their website, and they've got a reader for it. I think they made a book cover for it as well.
Yeah,
and it's got like
Okay,
a cartoon
you heard
version
it.
of Harold.
BBC Radio 2 or BBC 2.
Yeah.
They have a website, so go, and they have archives back to 2014. You think it is?
Yeah,
well, I think 15. I reckon 15.
2015.
Probably, yeah, actually.
What's the title of the story?
Saving Harold.
Saving Harold. Okay, I love this. Okay, yeah, and if my viewers can't find it, maybe you guys could put a link to it on your channel.
Yeah, we'll put it on our channel on Twitter.
Yeah, we can do that.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that would be so cool. I'm sure that a lot of people would love to read the story that you wrote when you were
11-year-old William.
Yeah, when you were 10. That's just tremendous. So, yeah, awesome. Well, I am so excited to read whatever you guys produce, and these sound like just fantastic ideas. So there are going to be some more books out there with the name Gwynne on the cover. I am sure in the future this is going to be really
word Edward will be really small and it will just be Gwynne really big. Maybe I'll be Edward John Gwynne.
Yeah,
we'll do that.
That's your middle name is John? Yeah. Oh,
or you'll change it just so you can have that.
I could just call John Gwynne and then I'll probably sell more, wouldn't I reckon.
So you just put E John Gwynne.
Yeah, the E is
really small.
Invisible.
Got to shine a certain type of light on it.
Yeah. I need some nepotism here.
Is your middle name John as well, Will? So can you?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
Well, it's JR actually. So William
John
Ronald Gwynne. Got sharing two names with Tolkien.
Oh, I love that. I just love that.
I just realised I'm not the favourite.
Just got two names with Tolkien.
Named after Tolkien, and I was named after Dad.
It was more of a coincidence. I'll be honest.
Yeah, maybe.
Oh, that's so funny. And also, your dad wrote a wonderful character based on Will. My favorite character from the Banished Lands, actually, is the one based on you, Will. And Ed, you got a character too.
I don't think
you got. To be fair, Svik is a fan favorite.
Yeah, just because he likes cheese. That's why.
He's more than that. There's more to him than that.
I don't know.
But the cheese is the dominant factor.
Yeah. William was a main character. I'm a side cheese man.
When you paint it like that,
I don't mind. At least I'm in there. That's fine.
I mean, you're there, right? So,
and you tell the funniest stories.
I've got you and Dad in my books. Fine. We'll see how it goes.
Oh, vengeance! Okay, that's served cold here. Yes. Okay. Nice. I like it.
So, Philip, how did you plan the way of Idan? How did you go about it? Are you an architect or a gardener?
I'm much more on and of course it's really a spectrum. It's not really an either or, but I'm definitely more on the side of the architecture, the architect, I guess. Yeah. I actually wrote, I'm trying to remember how long it is. It's probably around 50 or 60 pages of just world building, and mythology, the history of the continent, stuff that never will appear in the books. And if it does, I'm making a big mistake because I'm putting boring history into my story.
Release a bestiary, you?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I thought I needed to do that first, and I made up the rudiments of languages. I'm not anywhere close to what Tolkien did, but I cheated. Of course, I based them on actual languages that I'm familiar with. So it's really more on the sounds of the language than anything else. So there's a language in there that I call it Ondunic, which is very much related to Welsh in terms of its sound system. Mm-hmm. There's a language in there that is very much related to South Asia. I speak Nepali, so Andumaic is the language of those people, and it has a similar sound system to Nepali and Sanskrit and all that. And then of course there's Old English and Old Norse, and I have cultures that speak languages that are very closely. The Old English one is sort of the default, I guess, language. I call it the Northern tongue in there. It's like Tolkien's common speech or whatever, you know. But then there's Theothic, which is the Old Norse-based one. I did a lot of planning. In other words, I really did, and to the point where I even tried to introduce myself to some of the characters by not writing stories about them, but just to kind of trying to describe them and sort of hash out a little bit of background on them and stuff like that. That would be present as I write the character in the story, but wouldn't be something I necessarily have to tell the reader about. That makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. It's a good way of doing it, because I see lots of authors that they will start writing characters and mythologies and culture, and they haven't planned it as such, especially in the depth that you have. And then they forget all about the stuff that they've mentioned and have to go back and try and, remember, oh, this fella has his hand missing, which one? And, this person has a relationship to this character and how so? And they forget about that. So that makes your, very efficient working there for it.
Yeah, and I think that hearing you say that, I'm not surprised, because I'd say your writing style is very vivid in terms of kind of the aesthetic, and also very immersive as well.
Oh yeah.
And I imagine, even though you're saying you're not mentioning all these 60 pages of the history,
it shows that
it shows. And I imagine whenever an opportunity arises where it adds a bit of the world building, you can kind of just drop that in there, and just making it more of an immersive experience. And so I'm definitely not surprised that you said you're more of an architect in that sense.
Yeah. I mean, I might have snuck in a few references to that history, but only where I felt like it would be important for the overall story. So I do have characters telling stories within the story, which are,
and they're some of our favorite bits, weren't they?
Yeah,
we love them.
Yeah, I could see where you guys would appreciate that sort of thing, being major readers of historical fiction and fantasy. I'm not sure every reader is going to love that, but again, I think I try to include it only where that history impinges on the plot of the current story. So and I love that sort of thing. So it was hard for me to resist putting more of it in there, because I grew up on Tolkien, and it's just part of the experience to me of reading Tolkien is just bathing in that world that he created. But I did resist to the degree that I realized Tolkien today might not even be publishable because of how much readers' tastes have changed. So I definitely think my story is much more streamlined than Lord of the Rings. At least I tried to make it so. But yeah, it's interesting because you guys read it a while ago, the first book, and we recorded a video. One of which actually two videos. One we released, which is the non-spoiler one, and then we have the spoiler-filled one, which I've had to hold on to all these months, and probably a year after we recorded it, I'll be able to release it, because I am putting out the first book in March. So finally.
Exciting. So tell us about the journey so far. How has this come about then?
I ultimately decided to go the self-publishing route, which I'm very happy with right now. And obviously I wanted to go traditional publishing. I wouldn't have tried if I didn't want to do that. And it didn't work out. My series is not what the particular editors that my agent submitted to are looking for at the moment. So I'm perfectly fine with that. And I am going to put the story out regardless. So I'm very excited about it. And the fact is, there are advantages, obviously, to traditional publishing, having that editorial eye, having the resources that the traditional publishers have, and just the I guess you could say, the cachet of having been put out there by a traditional publisher is still, I think, significant. That said, self-publishing is better than ever, and it's a much more viable route than it's ever been before. And I'm really relishing the creative freedom I have at the moment. So I did get significant editorial help from AP Canavan, who's Critical Dragon. And he is a professional, and I feel like that's just as good as I would get at a publishing house. And so, okay, great. I think I'm covered there. I am really happy with the artist that I have engaged to do the covers. I'm going for a more, I guess, mythological vibe. And you understand, you guys have read the first book, so you understand, I think, that there's some grounding in mythology there, and so I don't want realism on the cover, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I want something that speaks more of mythology and something a little more abstract, maybe.
Yeah.
So I found an artist who actually is a very dear friend of my daughter's. They became good friends at Princeton, and this artist has a style that is very
Okay,
yeah,
nice. Looking forward to seeing this cover.
Yeah, the painting style is very reflective of that. So for me, it just hit a kind of like I don't know if you've seen the original covers for Ursula Le Guin's Earthsea books, or Wizard of Earthsea had a woodcut on the cover, I think. And throughout the book, which is, for me, a Wizard of Earthsea is a much more like almost folktale kind of. So I like that. I like that style. And so I'm excited about the cover art. I'm seeing it evolve now. It's not finished yet for the first book, but it's getting there. And I'm pretty excited about it. And I've also engaged someone to do the map. So I think I sent you guys the map when you read the book, right?
Yeah.
Which you saw what I did there. It was I don't think it was terrible. It was a nice,
it wasn't terrible, no.
Hand-drawn map. But obviously not good enough for, a book to be published in. And so I found a person, and you probably know this person actually. So his name is Jack Shepard, and he has done a First Law map.
Yeah.
That will be appearing in a special edition of the First Law books. You know who I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I know, yeah.
Yeah. So I thought he would be so perfect.
Perfect, yeah.
To make my map, and I'm so thrilled that he agreed. And so I met with him like this on Zoom, because he's in the UK, like you guys, and he's working on my map, and I'm just so happy with what I've seen so far. And I'm a map geek too, so it's important to have a good map in there for me. So I really love what I'm seeing. It's like seeing the place that you created come alive, so I'm excited. I'm really, in case you can't tell.
I feel a bit surreal.
Oh, it sounds amazing, Philip. And it's, we're really excited for you as well. And I think everyone kind of has that dream of, being published by a company, but that's, that's not the modern way, really, is it? Self-publishing has been better, and the amount of creative, freedom and autonomy you get over who's going to read it as well. If you do an Audible version, who's going to be designing the cover, and
when it comes out, if I were going traditional and I were, fortunate enough to have them accept, I don't think my book would be out for another year, right? So, and who knows, it could be longer, because they sometimes have to sit on it for, too many other similar books or whatever. And so that freedom is important to me. And I'm kind of happy about it, actually. So I'm enjoying that aspect of this a lot, and the fact that I'll make a lot more money on each sale.
Yeah, that's not a bad thing, is it?
Doesn't hurt. And I think self-publishing is more viable than ever.
Yeah, definitely.
We have it's not the whole world, but we have a nice platform here on YouTube where we connect to people. So I have a feeling that you guys, who knows what will happen in your publishing journeys when you're ready to start that part of the process. You might get a traditional publisher behind you. It wouldn't surprise me at all if you do. That would be awesome. But I also think you have thousands of people who would already buy your book, whatever it is, because you've started engaging with this community here. And people know you and love you and want to read whatever you're going to produce. So that's kind of cool. And I don't think this has ever been possible, only within the last 20 or, decade, maybe, has this sort of been possible, I think.
And I can't see another kind of, obviously, I can't see anything different to BookTube that would give you that opportunity, or, that kind of following or base of people already who you engage with, and who would be willing to go and, and buy your book, and would have an interest without you having to, be kind of putting yourself out there and advertising it every single day and out meeting people. So you're able to do that. You've got, like you said, Phil, about us as well, thousands of people who'd love to read your book, and people are excited about it already, and that's only going to become more and more each year. And it's really exciting.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to seeing it put out to the world.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. I hadn't really thought about this when I started the channel, because I had no idea what was going to happen with this channel. I created it mostly to try to save my fantasy novels course that I teach at my college. And it turned into this, which is awesome. And being part of this community. And I don't know if I would have felt as positive as I do right now about self-publishing if it hadn't been for all of this. I probably wouldn't. In fact, I wouldn't have, right? I mean, I wouldn't be plugged into a community like this. So so it's really cool, and I feel very positive about the whole thing as a result. So I guess I have a lot of gratitude toward BookTube and to the community and people like you. It's great to be part of this, and I really have never been able to separate my teaching from what I do here on BookTube, from my writing. It's all just part of the same passion, really. I'm sure you guys relate to that too. So I'm excited. I'm really excited to see what will emerge with all of us here. I think it's fair to say that a lot of us who have channels that are dedicated to reading and talking about fantasy are also aspiring writers. I don't know what the percentage is, but I would be surprised if it were around half of booktubers are probably have a novel in the drawer or on the hard drive at least. And I think it's great that we can support each other.
Definitely.
100%. And we can't wait to get our copy signed.
Oh, you guys shall have an ARC.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
I mean, you guys are getting an ARC for sure, and signed, of course, because I feel like you guys, having read it, the draft as you did, and it hasn't really changed much, small details here and there, but I would love to be able to send you an ARC.
Thank you.
We'll be able to do a review on the channel.
Yes, we will.
Yeah, and I hope to be able to return the favor someday. If you're looking for, I know you have your residential developmental editor there, or alpha reader or whatever, but if you're looking for beta readers or whatever, here I am.
Oh, thanks, Philip.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll come knocking at some point in the future.
Please do. Yeah, everybody's gonna be jealous of me if you let me read your book. But
especially if you label it John Gwynne's new book. Yeah.
No, it's John Gwynne.
That'll be done.
And then, Will, in your case, it'll be small W, big John, and a small R, and then
J.R.R. Gwynne.
Yeah.
There you go. Just do that.
Oh dear.
Much easier. But no, it's really exciting, and BookTube is such a great kind of community for that as well. That we're that, and self-publishing looks really exciting. There was Ryan Cahill was an author as well that I think is really exciting in the self-publishing genre at the moment. His books look great, they feel great. If I read it, I wouldn't know. Well, when I read it, it didn't feel like it wasn't part of the big five publishers. And I think the quality of self-publishing has just risen in the last few years massively in terms of aesthetic and also actual quality of the writing.
And I'm working for the Broken Binding, so an online bookstore, and a big part of so the owner, he loves a lot of self-published fantasy, and so a big part of the site is dedicated to that. And it's amazing seeing the amount of love for self-published fantasy books.
Oh, every time I see a book from the Broken Binding, I just start lusting, because they're so beautiful. I mean, they make these wonderful editions.
And they've just set up a press for self-published fantasy.
Wow. That's awesome. Well,
yeah.
It's exciting. It's really exciting. I mean, the possibilities are much richer than they've ever been in terms of venues to get your story out there. And I think that's a good thing,
Definitely.
I'm excited. I didn't realize how excited I would be to go this route, but I'm really loving it right now.
Yeah, well, it must be amazing having years of hard work coming to fruition now.
Yeah, it really has been. And I never thought of myself as somebody who has good timing. but I did start this channel in February of 2020, just before the pandemic hit. And it seems like that was a good time to start a YouTube channel.
Yeah, definitely.
And if I'm getting into self-publishing right when it's all these beautiful possibilities are just blossoming, maybe my timing is better than I thought.
And surely people on your fantasy course, they will have to buy your book to actually get a space.
Mandatory. Yeah.
If they want a good grade, they're gonna have to buy it, or 2 copies.
Well, I think it would make a nice Christmas present, you know.
Definitely, yeah.
Possibly.
Are you going to be doing an audio version? Have you thought about that?
I've thought about it very much, and right now I'm spending some money on getting the ebook and the paperback out there. I decided for the moment not to do a hardcover. Eventually, maybe if it does well, I'd love to do that. And audiobook, though, is something I think I would prioritize even before that. I'd have to, and it's funny because I know so little about audiobooks because I'm not an audiobook listener. I told you guys when you earlier, like months ago, I think it was Ed who was at the time listening to Fellowship of the Ring, being narrated by Andy Serkis. And I thought, okay, I've never done an audiobook. This has got to be my window into audiobook listening. Yeah. And I went onto Audible and I started, I got Fellowship, and I even was so optimistic I got the other 2 and started listening to Andy Serkis. And I thought, wow, he's so good. This is so great. And then I wish I could rewind this, because that's how I read. I constantly go back and I reread passages.
Yeah.
I love pausing over great sentences. And so, and then I thought, okay, well, I'll just have to be very attentive and listen. And so I couldn't do anything while I was listening, because if I tried to wash the dishes or even go for a walk, I would be distracted. And suddenly I'd realize, oh, I just missed like 5 minutes of narration. Rewind. So I realized that, okay, I have to just be doing nothing. And I would lie down on my bed, listen to Andy Serkis, and you know what happens then, right?
You fall asleep.
So
won't tell Andy Serkis, it's fine.
I'm a complete failure.
At least you tried.
To audiobooks, I'm a complete failure. I really tried.
I think you should narrate it yourself though, Philip, because you obviously have a grasp of the language. And I think definitely if you're looking at Audible, that's what we were going to say beforehand. Definitely think about maybe doing it yourself as well, because that'd be awesome.
It would be.
I don't know if people want to listen to me for that long.
Oh, of course they do. Of course they do.
But it would be cheap. I wouldn't have to pay myself.
Exactly. You just need a studio, some headphones.
And people love an author who's doing their own audiobook as well, because they feel like it's going to be more authentic and kind of the style, the delivery, the tone, and atmosphere. Yeah.
I would think about that, I guess. I mean, I don't particularly like my voice, but the cost factor is pretty I would love to have a really, accomplished actor or something do it, but I'm pretty sure that's out of my budget at the moment. So, but I will definitely do an audiobook at some point. For me, it's very important because there are a lot of people who engage with their reading in that way more than not, and some who exclusively engage in audiobooks. And I don't want to exclude those people, obviously. So.
And definitely a lot of self-published fantasy as well. I forgot the narrator of Ryan Cahill's books. He's great.
Yeah, even Abercrombie said that his sales are split: a third Audible, a third Kindle, and a third physical. Wow. So it was actually that much. Obviously, he has an extraordinary narrator.
Yeah, Stephen Pacey, right, is the name of his.
Yeah. So I think that probably has a big factor to play. But yeah, I mean, it just even having just a third of sales,
and Audible is growing so much every year.
Is that right? Okay, well then it's probably economically sensible too, then, to
at some point, yeah,
and to make that investment. I've always been thinking it more in terms of accessibility. I want my book to be accessible, but you're telling me there's actually a financial reason to do it as well. So yeah, I mean, then it's a no-brainer, really, isn't it? So yeah, I'll have to look into that. I think right now I've got my hands full.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
To get the ebook and the paperback version.
Juggling everything, I imagine.
Yeah. So, but we're gonna go with a 6x9, which is more like a trade paperback.
Okay. Yeah.
6 inches by 9 inches.
Yeah.
So, yeah, probably centimeters make more sense to you guys, but I don't know what it is in that.
We're about inches.
Yeah, we can go with that.
Okay. All right. I never know, because we are so archaic over here, and we'd go with feet and inches and pounds.
It's when it goes to yards and pounds where I haven't got a clue.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure all that stuff was British originally, but you guys went metric and we didn't. So, so we have miles still, and you have kilometers and all that, right?
I don't get kilometers really. I stick to miles.
Yeah.
But do you?
Yeah. We are more kilometers over here.
Okay, interesting. And of course, you still have your archaic stuff. You'll tell somebody how many stones you weigh or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, I weigh 10 stone or so.
Yeah.
I remember when I first heard that. What? So you do have your little archaism still, I guess.
Yeah, our strange quirk
hidden away.
Yeah, we all do, don't we, at some point?
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. So, what are you guys excited to be reading in 2023?
So I've actually just started reading Dreaming the Eagle, historical fiction about Boudica, by Amanda Scott, and you read the whole quartet this year. Absolutely loved it. Papa Gwynne.
I do recall Ed giving some praise to that.
Yeah. I think I had about 12 videos in a row where I was just talking about Boudica.
Yeah, well, you said before Amanda Scott may be the Robin Hood of historical fiction.
Yeah.
And then I was like, whoa, steady on, Ed. That is saying that to me is big news. But I have to say, I've read 200 pages, so of course it's early, but her writing style, I'd say, is absolutely just extraordinary, that how you can just be immersed within a page or two. And these characters are so unique, and it is all character driven. It's absolutely brilliant.
Wow. So you think that you're going to be validating Ed's contention there?
I definitely do. Well, we were going to do a top 10 of 2022 video, but I was like, let's wait until I've read this. I've left a spot open, and I think it's going to be
your number one spot.
Right at the moment already, it's a 600-page book, so it's no small book. I'm 200 pages in, and it's already definitely in the higher echelons of that list.
Wow. Okay. All right. Awesome.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
So what's the read you're looking forward to, Ed?
I've just started the Prince of Nothing series trilogy, which I'm finding interesting. I think I'm definitely going to grow to like it. I've read just the first couple of sections, and not really chapters, are they? So, but I definitely like something with a philosophical twist, and I feel like R. Scott Baker is definitely a writer who is enjoying writing about kind of the morality, as well as people's thoughts and the way that people associate with each other and the landscape and things like that. So yeah, I definitely think that this might be the year of Baker. We shall see.
Interesting. Yeah, well, you're a McCarthy fan, Cormac McCarthy. I could see you liking Baker a lot. Really could. I'm on the third book right now. Exactly, that is what I'm reading right now. So I read the first two, and I had discussions of them with Jimmy and Joanna and Raph.
Yeah.
And we are going to be discussing the third book in early January. And I think Baker's brilliant. I really do. I think he's just one of the smartest fantasy writers I've come across. I'm not so sure. I'm definitely going to read all of the Second Apocalypse series. I will read the rest of the books. No question. But I think I need a little Baker break because, oh my gosh, it's so bleak. It is so. We were talking about grimdark before.
Yeah.
This is grimdark to me.
Yeah.
This is grimdark. I don't know if probably most authors aren't sitting down and thinking, I'm going to write grimdark now. This is just what came out of him. This was his story.
Yeah.
But it's grimdark. It is seriously, emphasizing our alienation and our absurdity, and that we are kind of just animals struggling to survive, and that the world is filled with either those who abuse and exploit or those who are broken. And there's not a whole lot else there. It's fairly bleak in that sense. And I talked about how Abercrombie, he's grimdark, but it's so bearable because he's so funny.
Yeah.
There's a bit of humor in Baker's writing, but not very much. And when I think of the series, like, I'm a huge Malazan fan, as you know. I love the Malazan Book of the Fallen and all the Malazan series by both Malazan authors. And they portray some difficult, awful suffering in there. But in their case, there's this emphasis on compassion, which to me elevates the series. It transcends the suffering in that sense, because you get these wonderful, beautiful, transcending connections between people. So there is something that alleviates that sorrow, that suffering, that bleakness. Whereas I haven't found that so much in Baker yet, but I still think it's very important to engage with this kind of writing. And I feel like I've only read The Road, but I feel like Cormac McCarthy is probably similar in that sense. Would you agree?
I think especially Blood Meridian.
Well, considering say this, The Road is probably one of his more uplifting books.
I mean, his most uplifting.
There's actually like a heartfelt relationship at the core of it.
Which... I mean, there's the father-son there. Yeah.
Whereas in anything else, take that away.
Yeah. I think, Blood Meridian, I mean, although it's my favorite book, it is the most bleak and dark and horrible, but it's also, I think, the way Cormac McCarthy writes, like you said, Joe Abercrombie has his humor. I think the way that Cormac McCarthy describes just pretty much everything, it makes it bearable to me, because I think he's a beautiful kind of wordsmith.
Is that what it is? Because Baker is similar for me, because he is. There are passages that contain beauty in spite of the bleakness of this world. I admire his craftsmanship in this. He's just that good of a writer. So I want to keep reading, and I'm intrigued by the way people work. I'm intrigued by our psychology. I'm intrigued by the fact that we are essentially animals that think of ourselves as somehow nobler than other animals, but are we? So I like what he's doing in there, questioning. I mean, I'm pretty sure I know his answer to the question of whether or not we have free will. I mean, let's just say it's different from Milton's response to that question, right? So, but what makes reads like that important? What makes that? I feel that it's writing that is stories that are important to engage in. I don't have to be uplifted all the time by what I'm reading. Right? I think that there are certain authors who just are bold enough to look at our existence in the most raw way. And I feel like Cormac McCarthy and Scott Baker are a couple of them.
I love finding books where authors take something, whether it's something they do or the way they do something or a theme, and they really take it to as far as it can go. And I like that with pretty much everything I'll read or I'll watch. If I watch something historical fiction, I want it to be as immersive as it can physically be, right down to, the instruments or that kind of thing, and the soundtrack. So I think that's what I love about reading, especially Cormac McCarthy. Everything feels like he's really ramping up to 10, whether it's the beauty of the description or, the true nature of horror and things like that. So I think, I think it's important to read because you find it fascinating, don't you? I think seeing the way that other people write and the way that other people think as well, and that writing a book is probably one of the most personal things you can do, and you're really getting across your character and your thoughts through a book. You don't have to agree with the characters, their actions. Like Mark Lawrence doesn't agree with Jorg, does he? But
right.
It's fascinating to read about a character, who does things that he does and the way that he thinks, and
and
that's
thought-provoking element,
definitely, and it's those books that really do make you think a lot.
Yeah, that's what you just said is so interesting, because I feel like I have created characters, and every single one of them, there's a bit of me.
Yeah.
And there are characters who do some terrible things in my story, obviously, but I can see myself in that character too, which is slightly disturbing. but there is that fascination. You're absolutely right, Ed, about that. That we are exploring facets of ourselves as we write, and so when you put that out there, you're putting out pieces of yourself, even if it's not obviously an autobiography, but the fact that I can create a character who sees the world a certain way means that I'm at least capable for a moment of seeing the world that way, right?
Exactly.
At least I have to fool myself into thinking that.
And I think that's why, another reason why I love multi-POV, because you can have such a broad spectrum of characters, can't you? Even though everyone in the first law is, it's quite nihilistic at times, and but also has that sense of humor. But that having a multi-POV is as a writer, your opportunity to explore as many different avenues as you want to. And enjoy it while you do as well, which is cool.
But when you get down to it, a lot of it is about what it means to be human, isn't it? And you can obviously, some books, there's no right or wrong. Some books will look at the more positive elements of humanity, which is great. So we don't want to be reading, as you said, you can't just binge read Cormac McCarthy or Scott Bakker, but you can still love those elements and then love the more positive elements. And it's about that's one of the things about reading, isn't it? It's such a spectrum.
You're so right. And it would be boring to read books in which everyone is nice and happy, right? For some reason, those don't sell very well.
I know.
So you're absolutely right. And I think, different writers respond differently. I see, for example, in your dad's books, a lot of hope, a lot of love, a lot of heart, in spite of the vast amounts of suffering that do happen in those books. Other writers don't tend to include as much hope, and so, but that's one. There are so many valid ways, I think, of responding to the human condition. Are you guys going to have multiple POVs in your books?
Mine actually isn't. It's just one POV, and it's so which is interesting, because I love to read multi POV, but it's just I had an idea and I've just stuck with it. So
and mine is they're twins, so 2 POVs.
2 POVs. Okay. So neither one of you are doing multiple POVs. Okay. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. I've been thinking about the way, what books I really love. And I was a bit worried about myself. I was thinking, I really love reading about war and death and swords and pestilence and all sorts. I was just thinking, why on earth, why do I not make it easier on myself and, enjoy books that are a bit more, hopeful and happy. And I think it is because the characters go to the ends of the earth for each other or to accomplish something, and it's exciting to read about. Lord of the Rings is exciting because of the the lengths Frodo and Sam and everyone else is willing to go in the name of hope. So I think that's probably why, unless I do just like a bit of brutal.
But then you like Blood and Meridian, where they won't go to the ends of the earth for anyone,
especially apart from themselves. So there you go.
I think that the purpose, or one of, let's just say it this way, one of the very important purposes of art and literature and music is to reflect our struggles. And so we see suffering in storytelling, and it's important to engage with that there, because it is a way for us to work out, to feel that our suffering has a purpose, I think. One of the essays about fantasy that I admire a lot is Stephen Donaldson's. He actually wrote a couple essays that I did a video on, where he talks about fantasy being the literature of reintegration. Reintegration being feeling oneself reintegrated in the world, feeling like one has a meaning, one has a purpose. You engage in a story in which a character goes through suffering, experiences alienation, but ultimately finds purpose and meaning, usually in communion with other characters, and finds connection. And that is elevating. And you emerge from that story having participated in all of that vicariously, feeling that sense of meaning and purpose and elevation and belonging. That's reintegration. And in a world that continuously tells us that we don't have meaning, right? I think that in modernity, one of the things about it, I mean, it's nice to have modern medicine and clothes and food and all that, but I do feel like we're bombarded with this message that we don't have meaning a lot of the time. So fantasy can deliver that sense of reintegration. That Donaldson is very eloquent when he talks about it.
Yeah, definitely. And even if you look at Joe Abercrombie, as we said, is grimdark, but you can see through the things that have been taken away what maybe you can think about what is important in life. What do these characters not have?
Yeah.
That where, as I said earlier, there's that moment where you think, is there going to be found family? And you see, it's probably the only moment that you could say is happier than the rest. But then as soon as you that's taken away and it kind of crumbles those relationships, you see how important they were in those early stages.
Yeah, and the other thing is, you find that you love those characters.
Yeah.
If I can love Logan Nine Fingers, if I can love Glokta, maybe I can love myself, right?
Yeah.
So even then,
maybe, or maybe not after you said some of your characters are part of yourself, you know, the things they do. You know.
I've been reading The Way We're Done very differently.
Your qualities, Philip.
Yeah, seriously. I probably should work on that. So, but the nicer characters too. They're also
they're all part of you as well.
Little reflections of me. Yeah, hopefully. So, well, you guys, this has been just delightful, and I'm so happy to have had this opportunity to reconnect with you. Speaking of connections in the world and all of that, it's just really great to have the opportunity to sit with you. Every time I've been able to do this, I've really enjoyed myself a lot. So thank you guys very much.
No need to thank us at all. It's been absolute privilege to be on here and just love talking about books with you.
Yeah, and we always love chatting with you. Such a nice bloke, and thank you for having us on your channel. I'm sorry I didn't get more tennis puns in there. I was going to do that before we started, but yeah, we didn't even get onto tennis.
There's always next time.
Yeah. I mean, there is next time, I suppose. But if we ever meet in real life, which would be wonderful, we'll have to bring our tennis rackets.
Definitely.
Right?
Yeah.
Definitely.
We even played. I mean, it's freezing over here in the UK for us, freezing for us. Yeah. But we actually played tennis yesterday on Boxing Day, which is maybe a new tradition of ours.
Maybe, yeah.
We had an hour of sunlight. So
I played on Christmas Day.
Did you?
When it was 24 degrees Fahrenheit, which is, I don't know what that is in Celsius, but it's below zero.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. We respect you even more now.
Yeah. I mean, it does get to a point where the ball doesn't actually balance very much anymore. Because it's half frozen. But but I'm out there because I'm a psycho. But
it's quite dedication.
Yeah, definitely. And when we come over to America and get our books signed, we'll definitely bring our rackets as well.
Yes, well, we'll be signing each other's books, right? Or you'll sign yours for me and I'll sign mine.
Fingers crossed.
So that'll be awesome. Thanks so much, guys. And thank you, everybody listening and watching this. And until next time.